Hello there, welcome to Plus Talk on Plus Life. My guests today are David Lester-Massey and his husband Johnny Lester-Massey, and they're joining me with one very clear message. HIV doesn't get to define love. Good to see you both.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
Thanks for making the time, gents. Now, you guys have been quite public that you are a different relationship. When you decided to be quite public about this, what was going through your mind and what prompted you to do that?
I think for me, I will start by saying I started with making sure that Johnny knew privately first. From our very first date, and most people know this who know us and our story, that I started by sharing the information with him first. I disclosed on our very first date. At the end of our first date, so I wanted to make sure that I knew him, he knew me, before I disclosed my status. And I chose to disclose my status because I wanted to make sure that he was armed with the information that he would need to know to make an informed decision as to how far he wanted to go with me. In not only in a conversation, but in what I thought to be what life could look like with us moving forward. And so the decision to go public was more layered because we are both preachers' kids, a large family. We both are very outspoken, but we can be very private in some instances as well. So when we thought about what that would look like, we were approached by a magazine, and we had to have a very interesting conversation about what that would look like. So in that conversation, we first wanted people to understand the educational side. What does that mean? Sero difference, discordant, mixed status. And so when the information got out there, I don't think my family had an issue with it as much as Johnny's family just did not have the right information that they needed to have. So I'll let Johnny talk about his experience.
Yeah, Johnny,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear that. I mean, those can be very difficult conversations between the two of you, let alone
Mhm.
then you bring in the family dynamic and, everything that comes with that.
Correct. And so, yeah, for me, I think that when David shared with me in the beginning, I think a lot of people want to know, like, well, what did you say? What did you say? Well, David's a person, he's a human. So for me, I wanted to make sure he was okay. And I did. I asked him, was he okay? And it wasn't the first time that I had heard that. So I'm meaning it wasn't the first time that someone had shared their status with me, but I've told him that he was the first person who shared his status, and they were like 20 minutes later, so you want to get in the bed? Like, but he didn't do that to me. And so it kind of gave me the opportunity to process. And I did. And I actually, the craziest thing, I reached out to my doctor immediately, and I just kind of filled my doctor in because we had that kind of relationship on what I was thinking about, how I was feeling. And my doctor told me without hesitation, and this was years ago, he was like, he loves you. And he says, I've been practicing medicine for over 30 years, and I can probably build a wall for you and tell you how many people wish someone would have told them. And I think for me, my doctor asked me some other questions as well. And for me, it became this is somebody that I'm interested in. And what is this really going to look like? But I always give David, his props and praise for the way we set our relationship up from the emotional standpoint and the intimate standpoint. It wasn't like I'm I'm positive. I'm living positive, but I'm undetectable. So you ready to do this or not? It wasn't that. It never gave that, and I can always appreciate that from him. Now, when it comes to the family, the family is an interesting dynamic. David's family, I feel, they've sat with his information for quite some time. My family, hmm, okay, let's put it this way. I don't think they sat with my information for a short amount of time. I think they knew a long time ago what was going on over here. They just may have not wanted to speak it out loud. And so I think that maybe I beat them to the punch and I kind of said it out loud for the first time, and it kind of made everybody go, uh-oh. And so we got to deal with this. And so, it's been a journey. I mean, some people have dealt with it. Other people are still dealing with it, I guess you could say. And I think where we have found our happy medium is for David and I. We make sure we're good and we can do life together because at the end of the day, we have to do life together. And when it comes to my family, I find for the most part, I get along so much better being a few states away.
Yeah, absence makes the heart grow fonder. My parents live in Australia. It's interesting what you say there about your doctor saying, he loves you, especially about disclosure. As someone myself living with HIV, and David, we can talk about this about when do you disclose, when don't you disclose. I mean, it's a minefield.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always sort of thought, well, if I'm going to sit and tell you something incredibly personal that in this day and age with U equals U and all of that, really, there's zero risk to you, but I'm willing to do that. I think that speaks quite a bit to our character and what our intentions are versus someone who sort of sits on it. But everyone's journey is their own. They're all different. What's the biggest myth you guys have heard about mixed status couples, and how do you set about proving it wrong?
I think one of the biggest myths that I have heard is that you cannot enjoy intimacy freely. And that's definitely a myth, because we understand, not only do we understand the science, but we trust the science. But I also understand a different part of the science, because although U does equal U, adherence to medication is so important, because if there's ever a time, this is the part that people do not talk about, if there's ever a time that I am not medically adherent, if there's ever a time that I choose to not take antiretroviral treatment, then my status changes, and then I become detectable again, and I put my partner at risk.
Yeah, well, that's it. U equals U only works if you are really you, so to speak. Johnny, for you, how has the science and especially the messaging around U equals U changed the way that for you as a person you can love and trust in situations like this?
Well, the interesting thing is, so okay, now I'm going to start to sound like we're the old gay couple. We've been together so long that we were together before U equals U. But the
Yeah.
interesting part about that was my doctor, the night that I met David, he introduced me to U equals U unofficially. And he basically told me, he's very vivid. He painted a picture. He said that if I were to line up 10 guys and allowed you to sleep with all 10 of them, and then I gave you an option to sleep with David, I would always bet on David because I know he's in care. I know the numbers. I know everything that's going on with him. With these other random people, I don't know anything about them, and neither do you. And so that was kind of my introduction, if you will, to U equals U. But I think over the course of us being together, my biggest struggle in the beginning was I didn't feel like I had a role in this. And then I was like, what? And I was like, well, I kind of support can be a role. Support can be a role for David because I want to make sure that he's good. I used to. It's interesting the way the science has impacted us. When we first started dating. David used to have an alarm in his phone like every night, and it would. And I learned to know what that alarm meant, and it would be like, oh, he needs to take his medication. And so even if we were somewhere he was asleep or what, when I heard the alarm, it was like, hey, you want to take your medication or bring him the pill, that kind of thing. And to see him go from that to graduate to now he's doing injections. That's been just something that has been, groundbreaking to see the level of care and how it's changing over the course of time. So that has been something that has been unique for me to experience.
I love that. And, beyond all of that, I think what this science shows us and allows us to really know and understand now is that couples can conceive, whether through the traditional ways of conceiving a child or less so. What do you want people to know about that? For people, maybe the straight folks out there who think, well, they're two gay dudes, whatever, that's all good for them. But for people who want to start a family, what does this all mean?
What I think it means for people who are in the conceiving thought process is really think it through. Really think it through what it means for you before the child gets here.
Yeah.
before they get here, really
Mhm.
understand what that means because you do open yourself up, not just physically, you open yourself up emotionally, you open yourself up financially, you open yourself up psychologically, you open yourself up to all of these different things. And HIV, even as I say this is a part of us, HIV is just a backdrop of our lives, but it's not our entire life. It's not the totality of who I am. It's a part of who I am, but it's not the totality of who I am. So if you are with someone that you are loving and trusting, and you're thinking about opening your relationship up to invite another life as a part of your situation, think about what that really means. So if HIV is just the one chronic ailment that is plaguing you right now, if so to speak, think about how that will impact the child if you do conceive. Think about what that will look like because science is forever updating, science is forever changing. So if your child grows up and has to learn about through history what this meant for their parent, it doesn't just affect you, it will affect your child too. Think
Mhm.
the whole.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's really sage advice, Johnny. What's the most amusing kind of ridiculous reaction you've ever received when somebody has learned that you are in a different relationship? One that's just made you go, "What?" It seems like
Well,
you both have stories. So I'll start with you, Johnny, and then
We have
David,
the
let's hear
same
yours.
one.
well,
Okay.
I think that we have been public for quite some time, and it's when we say public, it's one thing to be like, there may be one asset of you at, on Facebook or social media saying, your status or whatever at an event or whatever. But David and I have been featured over and over and over again. The message has been there over and over again. Now, I have lovely family members. I said I get along with a better 2 states away, but I have lovely family members that have learned about David through different means, whether it's family, whether it's, but this particular thing that I'm thinking about, a particular person learned about David through a magazine article that was done about us, and they called someone else in the family and was like, "Did you know he was with somebody living with HIV?" And it was like this thing that like the people in the family, I don't know if it's like that country Tennessee home thing, they were just kind of all whispering and whispering, and it got to one aunt who I loved very, very dearly, and they got to her and they told her, and she said, "Okay, he knows what his partner's got. What about the hoes that you sleep with?" So that for me, like, and to this day, when I tell you me and her are like this, like we've always been like this. But
By
it
the
just really, it really just goes to show how sometimes people their mindset can leave their behavior and it can get focused on something else that we were just sharing. And even in the article we were talking about medication adherence, we were talking about being undetectable, like it was. So that to me was just a very outrageous and comical moment.
Well, and it goes to what your doctor said that he could line up 10
Yeah.
complete strangers that you could be intimate with, but you're still better off picking David because David's on treatment and knows what the deal and is taking care of himself. I've said the same thing. What about you, David? Is it the same story or
It
have you
was.
got a different? Yeah.
It was the same story, but it affected me a little bit differently. And I'll
How so?
um the the conversation actually happened, and I won't forget it because it actually happened on my birthday that year. And I had just come from Johnny had treated me to a spa day that year, and I'd actually just finished a massage. And I noticed him, his behavior shifted a little bit. So of course I know him. So I said, okay, what's going on? And so when he told me, I knew the family members that he was talking about, and it brought me back to a place that I was always reminded that although I'm okay with where I am, I know he's okay with where I am, and I understand the aunt he's speaking of, she's okay with where I am. It always brings me back to there's still more education to be done.
Yeah. And that's why we do it. That's why we have conversations like this. In the last remaining moments I've got with you both, and this is for both of you, if someone believes that HIV is an instant, nail in the coffin to a relationship, they're HIV positive, you can't, you shouldn't, it's the end of it. What do you say to them?
You want to go first?
I'll let you go.
So I would say to that person, if they find out that they're a person that they're thinking about that they're interested in is positive, I think they have to. I just fall back on what I did. You got to educate yourself first. I had to educate myself on what this looked like, and I had to also educate myself on what was to be expected of me, what my role was, and I think that going back to the beginning, I can't get away from the beginning. I learned. My doctor also shared with me one thing he said, you have to be able to answer one question, Johnny. If something happens to David, are you ready to be a caregiver? He said, if you can't answer that question and you can't say yes, leave it alone. Leave it alone. And so for me, that's kind of been something that I've used as a guide, even in conversations between David and I. We are very much in constant communication about how we're feeling about things. And I think that the same regimen that we started out with in 2013 is the same regimen that we're doing now in 2025. I don't have to go and get, tested every 3 months, but I do it. It's the psychological thing for me as to where I just want to make sure that what I can do, whatever I'm doing. And David and I, we laugh about this all the time. We always say our calculators aren't broken. What I mean by that is we don't have 3, 4, 5, 6 people in our bedroom coming in and out. And I'm no shame to anybody that does, but I'm just saying that too could add another layer that you now have to think about and trust, and it just can become complicated. So I think that for me, it's possible, but they gotta educate themselves. You just gotta educate yourself.
And for me,
what about you, David?
I would say if that is your first thought, that if you realize or you find out that the person that you're interested in is living with HIV, if that is your first concern, do not enter a relationship with them until that is no longer your first concern.
Yeah, wow, exactly. HIV doesn't kill love. If anything, it just makes it stronger. David and Johnny, thank you so much for making the time and having this conversation with us.
Thank you, Karl.
Thank you.
It has been a real pleasure. Hey, that's going to do it for this episode of Plus Talk. What did you think? Leave a comment below. Let us read something amusing and entertaining to pass the time, will you? And you can like, follow, and share. We're across all your favorite social platforms at Plus Life Media. The website is pluslifemedia.com. We've got everything up on there. And until next time, be nice to one another. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.